You have seen the video. Four candles under a clay flower pot and a caption saying, "It will heat a room with no power," the way farmhouses did it in the 1950s. Farmhouses did not do that, not one of them. And I'm going to tell you exactly why in a minute with numbers because this particular idea has burned houses down and it is circulating harder every winter. But I am not here just to take something away from you. Those farmhouses genuinely did keep people alive through nights with no heat and no power, and they had a real method for it, and it is not what is in that video. It works, it costs nothing, and by the end of this, you will be able to do it tonight if the lights go out. Stay with me, because what they actually did is better than the trick and a great deal safer. I grew up hearing about the winter of the ice storm when the power was out for 6 days and the wind was out of the northwest and the temperature did not get above the teens. Nobody in that house lit a candle for warmth. What they did instead is the whole of this video and every part of it is free. By the end of this, you will know why a candle cannot heat a room, and it is arithmetic, not opinion. You will know the four things that Farmhouse did the moment the power went in order. You will know the single biggest mistake people make in a cold house, and almost everybody makes it. And you will know the two things that kill people in power outages, which are not cold. Here is the reframe, and it undoes the whole flower pot idea. A clay pot does not make heat, it only moves it around. That is the piece nobody thinks through. Put a flower pot over a candle and something real does happen. The clay gets hot and it radiates, and if you sit close to it, your hands feel warmer. That is not a trick, and it is not a lie. And it is exactly why the videos are convincing, but the pot did not create anything. Every bit of energy coming off it came out of that candle, and nowhere else. The pot changes the shape of the heat. It takes energy that was going straight up in a thin column and spreads it sideways in a way you can feel from a chair. That is all it does. So the only question that matters is how much energy the candle was giving you in the first place. A household candle puts out somewhere around 80 watts. Four candles then is roughly 300 watts. Now hold that number against your house. Well, a small electric space heater is 1500 watts, and a space heater struggles to hold one bedroom on a cold night. A furnace is many times larger again. A single person sitting still puts out around 100 watts, which means four candles is putting about as much heat into your room as three people standing in it. And an average room on a cold night is losing heat through the walls, the ceiling, the windows, and the floor at a rate that dwarfs all of that. 300 watts against that loss is not a rounding error away from working. It is not close, that is the arithmetic, and it is why no farmhouse ever tried it. Those families were burning cordwood by the ton. They knew exactly what it took to heat a room because they had cut it, split it, and carried it. The idea that four candles would do the job would have struck them as a joke. And here is the harder part. It is not simply useless, it is dangerous in three separate ways. An open flame under a heavy ceramic pot, unattended in a dark house near blankets and curtains and people who are cold and tired and going to fall asleep. That is the setup. Fire departments have been warning about this every winter since the video started, and there have been fatal house fires connected to it. The pot itself is a hazard. Ceramic under sustained direct flame can crack, and terracotta can hold moisture that turns to steam and makes it fail suddenly. Now you have a hot broken pot and loose candles on whatever it was standing on. And burning anything indoors in a sealed room consumes oxygen and produces combustion products. Candles are not the worst offender here, but people do not stop at candles. Somebody who believes an open flame will heat a room is one cold night away from bringing in a charcoal grill or a camp stove or running a generator in the garage, and those kill people every single winter in this country. So that is the correction, and I want it said plainly before I give you anything else. Do not use candles to heat a room, not four of them and not 40. Now let me tell you what that house actually did because it is genuinely clever and it is completely free. They did not heat the house, they abandoned it. That is the whole method, and it is the opposite of what almost everybody does now. When the power fails, the modern instinct is to try to keep the house going. People bump the thermostat, they run space heaters in three rooms, they leave doors open so the heat gets everywhere. All of that is spreading a small amount of energy over a large volume and losing it. That farmhouse gave up on the house within the hour. They picked one room and let everything else go cold. The room they picked was the kitchen, and there were reasons. It was the smallest heated space. It had the cook stove in it. It was on the side of the house away from the wind, and it had the fewest windows, and it was in the middle of the building with heated rooms around it rather than on a corner where two outside walls meet. Then they closed the house down around that room. Interior doors shut, blankets hung over doorways that had no doors, rugs rolled against the bottom of the doors. Every room they were not using was now a buffer, and a cold buffer between you and outside is worth a great deal. Then they made the room smaller still. And this is the part I want you to remember, because it is the actual secret and it is not about the room at all. They built a tent, blankets and quilts over the kitchen table, or a rope strung across the corner with quilts hung on it, and the whole family and the mattresses inside it. Sometimes they simply pushed two beds together in that one room, and everybody slept in a heap under every quilt in the house. That is not a hardship story. That is thermodynamics. A room is a very large volume of air to warm, and it loses heat to every surface. A blanket tent is a very small volume, and the only thing warming it is people, and a person is an 80 to 100-watt heater that never goes out. Under a tent, that output is not fighting a whole room. It has almost nowhere to escape to. You do not warm the house, you do not warm the room, you warm a space the size of a bed using bodies, and you let the house be cold. And it works far better than any candle ever could, because the human beings in that room were already putting out more heat than the flower pot ever would, and the only thing that had ever been wrong was the size of the box they were heating. If this is already making you think differently about that video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn the notification bell on while you are there. I put out one of these every week, the old practical knowledge told honestly, including the parts where the internet has got it badly wrong. The bell is the only way these reach you. Then stay right here, because the next part is what to do before the power goes, not after. It is worth knowing what heating that house actually cost, because it explains why nobody was fooled by a candle. A farm burned somewhere between 5 and 10 cords of wood in a hard winter, and every stick of it was cut, split, hauled, and stacked by hand, mostly in the fall, mostly by the same people who did everything else. If you bought coal instead, it ran a few dollars a ton, delivered in the middle of the 1950s, and a house went through several tons. Now put a candle next to that. What? A family that had spent 3 weeks of its own labor laying in fuel had an exact physical sense of how much energy a room swallows. They had carried it. You cannot sell a wax candle as a heat source to somebody whose shoulders are still sore from the woodpile. That is the real reason this idea is new. It could only be believed by people who have never once had to produce their own heat. Now let me tell you about the money. And this one is about attention rather than a product. Nobody is selling flower pots as heaters. The reason that idea spreads is not a company. It spreads because it looks wonderful on camera and it takes 11 seconds to watch, and that is worth understanding, because it tells you which kind of old knowledge survives now and which kind dies. The candle trick is visual, cheap, surprising, and completely wrong. Closing off rooms and sleeping under a blanket tent is correct, free, and has nothing to look at. One of those travels and one does not. So an enormous amount of genuinely useful survival knowledge is sitting unwatched while a dangerous piece of nonsense goes around every November, and no villain arranged that. It is just what happens when the only filter on old knowledge is whether it films well. There is a second thing worth naming. Look at what does get sold for a power outage. There are emergency heaters and fuel canisters and generators and battery banks, and some of that is genuinely worth owning. But the things that would keep most families safest through most outages are a stack of blankets they already have, a roll of tape, and a plan. Nobody advertises a plan. I am not telling you there is a room somewhere where men decided this. There is not. What happened is simpler and worse. It is a quiet agreement between what sells and what films, and the useful methods have nothing to offer either one. Nobody has to coordinate, and nobody has to lie. The correct answer is just boring, and boring loses, and it has been losing for a long time now. Now, here are the warnings, and this is the section that matters more than anything else in this video. 2 things kill people in winter power outages, and cold is not usually the first one. Carbon monoxide is the first. Never run a generator in a garage, a basement, a crawl space, a shed, or anywhere near an open window, even with the door up. Outside, well away from the building, pointed away from it. Never bring a charcoal grill indoors, not into a garage, not into a fireplace. Never use a camp stove or a propane heater indoors unless it is specifically rated for indoor use, and even then follow the ventilation instructions exactly. Never use a gas oven or a range to heat a room. Every one of those kills whole families every winter, and it kills them quietly while they sleep. Have a battery-powered carbon monoxide alarm and know where it is before you need it. Your plug-in ones stop working the moment the power does, which is exactly the moment the risk goes up, and understand why this one catches people who are not careless. Carbon monoxide has no smell and no color, And the early symptoms are a headache and feeling tired and slightly sick, which is precisely how everybody feels anyway, on the second night of a cold outage. There is no moment where it announces itself. That is why the rule has to be absolute, rather than judged in the moment. Nothing that burns fuel comes indoors, no exceptions, no matter how cold it gets. If that landed, hit like and subscribe and ring that bell. Now the second one, fire. Power outages are a peak time for house fires, and the causes are almost always the same. Candles left burning, space heaters too close to furniture, improvised heating. If you use candles for light, keep them in stable holders on a hard surface away from anything that will burn, and never in a room where everybody is asleep. Flashlights and battery lanterns are better and they cost almost nothing. Now, hypothermia, and this is the honest limit on what I have told you. The blanket tent method works well for a healthy adult in an ordinary house. It is much less reliable for infants, for people over about 75, for anybody on certain medications, and for anybody with a chronic illness. Those people lose heat faster and notice it later. Confusion, slurred speech, drowsiness, and a person who stops shivering when they are still cold are all late signs, and a person showing those needs help immediately. And if the house is genuinely dropping toward freezing and it is going to be a long outage, do not sit there being tough about it. Go somewhere warm, a relative, a neighbor with a stove, a warming shelter. Many counties open them, and many people never think to check. That is not defeat. That is the same judgment those farm families used when they hitched up in the dark. One more. If it is going to freeze hard and you are leaving, open your cabinet doors under the sinks and let faucets drip, and know where your main water shutoff is. A burst pipe will do more damage to your house than the cold ever will. So here is exactly what to do in order when the power goes. Pick your room in the first 10 minutes. Small interior, fewest exterior walls, fewest windows away from the prevailing wind. Get everybody and everything you need into it, and be decisive because every trip through the house afterward costs you. Shut the rest of the house down, close every interior door, hang a blanket over any doorway without one. Roll towels along the bottom of doors, including the door to the room you are in. Deal with the windows in that room. Close the curtains and blinds at dark because a window at night is a heat drain, and open them on any side the sun actually hits during the day, because that is free energy, and it is real. If you have any plastic sheeting or even a shower curtain, tape it over the window frame with an air gap behind it. Get off the floor and out of the big air. Move a mattress in. Build the tent over the bed or the table with every quilt in the house. Emios, small volume is the entire game, and put something between you and the floor. Whatever you do, a cold floor will take heat out of a body all night long by direct contact faster than the air will, and people sleeping on a mattress laid flat on floorboards get colder than they expect. Cardboard, a rug, spare blankets, cushions off the couch, anything that breaks that contact, dress in layers with a hat, because a surprising amount of heat leaves through your head and people forget it indoors. Wool or fleece rather than cotton, and dry socks. Change anything that gets damp immediately. Eat and drink. Being cold burns calories and your body is the furnace. Warm drinks help more than they should, and a hot water bottle at the foot of the bed is one of the most efficient uses of a small amount of fuel there is. And keep everybody together in that one room, including the dog. Everybody in there is another 80 watts, and beyond the physics, nobody in a cold, dark house should be alone at the other end of it. One more thing, because it is the part I actually remember. There is a detail from that ice storm week that I did not understand until I was grown. The kitchen was the warm room, and the whole family lived in it for 6 days, and my grandmother did not treat it as an emergency at all. She cooked properly. She sent people out to do the chores on a schedule. She made the children do lessons at the table, and I asked about it years later, and she said something that stayed with me. She said the cold was never the dangerous part. She said the danger was people going strange, sitting in the dark with nothing to do and getting frightened and starting to make poor decisions. The routine was not comfort, it was the safety measure. That is the thing underneath every one of these videos I make. The old competence was never really about the technique. It was about not panicking, because a person who does not panic does not bring the charcoal grill inside. And I think that is why the flower pot video does so well, if I am honest about it. It is not really being watched by people who want to heat a room. It is being watched by people who are worried and who would like there to be a simple object that fixes it. I understand that completely, but the thing that actually gets a family through a cold week is not an object at all. It is knowing in advance which room and having the blankets where you can find them and staying calm enough to keep everybody in one place. If you have gotten this far with me, hit like, subscribe, and turn on that bell. Nobody sponsors a video that tells you the answer is closing some doors and sleeping in a pile, so the only thing keeping this in front of people is you. You did not forget this. Nobody taught you, and then you forgot. What was taken from you was not a trick with a flower pot, because there never was one. It was the ordinary knowledge of how a building loses heat and what a family does about it. And it got replaced by an 11-second video that will burn your house down. So do one thing this week while the power is on, because that is the time to do it. Walk your house and pick the room, smallest, most interior, fewest windows. Decide now so that nobody has to decide it in the dark. Then tell me in the comments which room you picked, what county you are in, and what your family did the last time the lights went out for days, because I read everyone, and those stories are the reason I keep recording. And if this rang true to you, come back for the next one, because I am going to show you how she kept buttersweet and spreadable on the counter through the whole summer with no ice and no refrigerator, using a crock, cold water, and one thing about the lid that almost nobody gets right. Nobody sells it, so nobody teaches it. I will. Keep it simple, keep it yours. And remember, the people who went 6 days without power and treated it like a Tuesday, new things we are only starting to remember.